Do is I'm going to ask one of the youth to come up and share how in his life this summer that God moved in his life. So at this time, I'm going to ask Chris Downs to come forward and share his testimony of how God has moved not only this summer, but in his life as a whole.
Thank you, John. Wow, this is pretty amazing. But I guess this is my testimony of God's work in my life over the last 4 or 5 months. I guess it began when, over the course of this last spring, the early part of this summer, I began to question my faith, my Christian beliefs, and I had an intellectual struggle between God's Word and science. Oftentimes, I ended up examining both in regards to any given issue, only to think, this doesn't make sense, or, both sources of truth seemed a bit laughable at times. With that said, I really did not want to lose sight of God. I desperately wanted to see Him and to rebuild the foundation of my faith on granite rock in place of the proverbial sand on which it stood. So I began to pray that God would reveal Himself to me and ask Him to help me have faith and to not lose sight of Him. And then I began to look forward to Mission Mexico 2008. I really can't tell you guys enough how much I look forward to the mission trip. They're always really incredible. But I know these trips always bring people much closer to each other. But more importantly, they bring us much closer to God. And that was why I really look forward to that. The only problem in this whole little plan was that this May, my parents told me that I would be responsible for paying for the trip. Well, in years past, they'd covered it. So I ended up looking for a job without much success until the end of June, at which point we had only a month left until we were supposed to leave. And at that point, I pretty much come to the realization that I wasn't going to Mexico. I had no idea what would become of my faith, and so it's kind of down at that point. There were several days going into, I guess, the beginning of July that Garrett Vanderwall and Andrew Sexton came over to my house and hung out, and they were talking about the good times we were going to have in Mexico. And finally, I said, "Tell them, you know what, guys? I don't think I'm going to be able to go. I'm way short on cash, and it's nothing short of a miracle is going to get me to Mexico." But after talking with them, they both encouraged me to look to members of the congregation here to do odd jobs and maybe earn some money, and maybe I'd be able to go. And Andrew also made me promise that I'd go to an informational meeting that was about a week and a half before we were scheduled to depart to Mexico. And so I was like, well, I don't think I'm going to be able to go, but I'll go to this meeting and see what happens. You never know. So I prayed that God would allow me to go to Mexico, that I desperately wanted to go. I prayed that if in God's eyes this trip was as important as I thought it was, that nothing would stop me from going. So then, a couple days later, I kept my promise and went to the Mission Mexico informational meeting to type all the loose ends and everything. And shortly after John finished his little speech and went off and did whatever John does after he finishes these things, I went up to Susan and Sarah Watkins, and because I knew that Susan was a sponsor last year, and explained that I wasn't sure if I would be able to go. I really intended just to ask if maybe I should just pay John for the plane ticket, and or maybe on the off chance that they had any odd jobs that I could do for him. But basically, I was just looking to see how I should handle the situation. However, to my utter astonishment, she said, "Don't worry, we'll need the money. We really want you to go. You can pay us back later. Don't worry about it. No rush." And so I just stood there shocked for a few minutes, and that was a truly amazing moment. It gets better though. Well, for me it does. That Sunday, the next Sunday, I went in and talked with John, about how I should handle the finances and make sure that I paid them in a way that God would handle it. And so right when I got done talking with John, I went to give them the first $60 that I believed I owed them, and Susan just came up to me and said, hold on a minute, I'm going to go talk to John. And she came back about 5 or 10 minutes later, and again, to my shock, she said, you know what, you don't owe us anything. We really want you to go, and they'd already paid for Hannah to go, and she was going to drive down, but she burned her hand working at Steak and Shake over the course of the prior week. And I just stood there once again, just kind of jaw on the floor, didn't know what to say and how to thank them. So I guess this is me thanking you guys once again, for everyone, because everyone deserves to know, I guess, how big of a deal it was. So thank you guys very much. And so as she was explaining everything to me, she said that basically all I had to do was go pay John $30, which was the difference between what my trip cost and what Hannah's cost, because I was flying and she was driving, and then I was even. So obviously that was an incredible night, and that week before leaving, I prayed that God would just reveal Himself to me and touch me, and just allow this trip to fulfill its potential as to what it could be in my life. So that was, I guess, the first part of it, but still gets better. So